Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be an influencer on social media or a professional blogger? Well, you're in luck because today I'll be interviewing Paige Comrie. Paige is the digital storyteller behind Wine with Paige, a website created to share the stories of the incredible people in bottles of wine who inspire adventure, take risks, and make the world a more beautiful place. Through photography, wine, and storytelling, she hopes Wine with Paige will inspire you to find your own magic in life, one glass at a time. Paige holds her WSET 3 and is a certified American wine expert. She's been featured by Somm Choice Awards as a top wine influencer. I invited Paige to talk on the podcast, one, because I'm so impressed with her work, but more importantly, I wanted to shed light on the amount of work that it takes to do what she does and to create the content either on social media or on her blog. I think influencers get a bad rep. And I can tell you right now, you won't believe how much work goes into every piece of content, every blog that she does, and just how she keeps her business alive. I mean, it's definitely not an easy area, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. Paige is one of the first people that I followed when I wanted to learn more about wine, and I'm really, really excited to get into the interview. So without further ado, let's chat with Paige. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to our chat. I remember thinking what would be something fun? I love having winemakers on here, but I'm like, who else would be fun to talk to, when it comes to wine? And I think you definitely came to mind right away. I'm like, I think people, one, they need to hear the work behind the wine influencer, so to say. I know you use other titles that incorporate more of what you do, but you do go into that. And I'm like, they need to know all the work that she has to do to go into that stuff. But just also learning more about, your story, I thought would be really fun. So I'm very glad that you came to join me.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. It should be fun.
All right. Well, yeah, let's jump in and maybe just start by telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hey, I'm Paige of Wine with Paige. I consider myself a digital storyteller. A more common word for that would be influencer, but I wear a lot of hats. And so I feel like that more encompasses what I do. Because it encompasses photography, writing, video. I do social media for myself and for wineries. And I have a blog where I connect people with great wines and great wineries.
I love it. Yeah, I also think influencer has unfortunately gotten that negative connotation to it. And people, have a thing in their head when they picture that. And they don't picture just everything you listed right there. I think everybody's just going, oh, yeah, she does do a lot of things. So I think that digital storyteller is a great way to describe it. So before we kind of go into what you do now, I'd love to learn about what sparked your interest in wine. It's one of my favorite questions to ask people because it's always a different story and it's always something really fun, I feel like. So what was it for you?
So I was in college. I was getting my business degree at the University of Michigan, and I felt like it was just such a boys' club, and I didn't feel like I was a part of it. So I was like, how can I be more businessy? What would a businesswoman need to learn? And the two things that came to mind were wine and golf. I never got to the golf part, but I became obsessed with wine. It was Christmas break my junior year, so newly 21. I picked up Wine for Dummies over Christmas break and just immediately fell in love. I realized how much there was to learn about it. That book is just the tip of the iceberg. And
Right.
I love things I can get nerdy about. And I also love the way that wine brought in storytelling. So all of the winemaker stories, the regional stories, the history, I love that too. And so I picked up every single book I could find at my library about wine, literally everything, and just became a complete wine nerd. like in a weekend. I was obsessed. And from there, I just kept learning everything I could.
I love it. I think we have very similar stories. I like that they're two different books, but they're also very like Wine for Dummies, and then mine was Cork Dork. So they're like
Oh,
both
yeah.
on the thing of like a silly sounding book, but like I did the same thing where like checking out every book that I could. I really like that there's also like a equivalent path if you believe in like the whole like you made one decision, but like there's another world out there where you made another decision, and you could be like a golf pro right now if you had chosen the other route of instead of golf over wine. But I'm glad you chose wine.
That is like crazy to think because I still don't really know how to golf. I do think it'd be fun, but I have not been golfing since I was like 8 years old.
Yeah. I tried going golfing. My husband enjoys it. And I hate the whole like you have to be quiet the whole time. And I'm like, what sport is it that you're not allowed to talk while you're doing it? This is very, very strange.
I like the excuse to be outside, but you can use wine as an excuse to be outside
Oh,
too.
exactly. In a way more fun way, I think. So, all right. So you got into wine, you did all the education, but you did it as basically a way to help you kind of in the business world. So I'm curious, how did you go from that to what you're doing now? What did it start like, and how did you kind of grow from, we can all see where you are now with a large following, and you just celebrated a really big milestone for your blog, which is amazing, but like, where did it start and how'd you get there?
It feels almost serendipitous looking back at it, at all of the ways my different interests connect now. Because I mean, I became obsessed with wine. I have a business degree. While I was in college, I used to photograph senior photos, weddings. I really wanted to be a fashion photographer, but didn't really think that was like a viable career. I didn't think I could make money doing photography. So I went into fashion initially, the business side of fashion. I was a buyer at Bloomingdale's. And that's when I started doing my WSET too. Then I got recruited by Walmart when they thought they were a tech company. So they had an office here in Silicon Valley. And I was like, okay, you're going to pay to move me to California. It's like an hour from Napa, from wine country. I'm very obsessed. This sounds like exactly where I want to be just for fun. And like, it's a good career opportunity. So I moved out here for that. That's when I started my WSET 3. Again, just doing it for fun, just because I'm a wine nerd and wanted to know everything I could. And while I was working full time in corporate, doing the WSET, I had this idea. I was like, someday I want to work for myself. I want to be location independent. I want to work for myself. I know e-commerce. I know wine. I know photography. Like, what if I did photography or websites or e-commerce design for wineries? Like, I don't know, maybe I'll just start my portfolio. So I started taking photos when I was going on these wine adventures and sharing them on Instagram and like regurgitating what I was learning in my WSET, like purely for fun, purely to like just kind of like start building my portfolio up so that like maybe I could someday make a business. And somewhere along the way, accidentally became a wine influencer. That was never the intention. It just kind of like it just happened, but it pulled in together so many different facets of things I was already passionate about. So I'm really grateful that it happened.
That's really fun. And so you started on Instagram, and then did you expand to a blog after kind of I don't know, you said like, yeah, recording everything and posting everything on Instagram.
Yeah. So initially I did buy the domain at the same time. Coming up with a name was the hardest part of the whole thing because I knew that I wanted a website to go with my Instagram. I didn't think it was going to be a blog because I had in my head that blogs were dead because I mean, fashion blogs don't exist in the same way they used to like a decade or so ago. So it's more like a business website at the time. Like you could book tastings with me. And I hope that it eventually would be you could book photo services with me, but I didn't feel like I had enough portfolio at the time. It was really secondary that it became a blog.
Wow, that's super cool. Did you like just feel like you needed another space to, or like, I guess something too that's like your own? I think that's something we forget about Instagram is like nothing that we put up there, like it's on our profile, but we don't necessarily kind of like we own the rights to it. But if Instagram goes down, it goes down with it.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, people are constantly having their Instagrams hacked and I don't know, different things. I think though the like turning point with realizing that blogs weren't dead in the way that I thought they were. I was on a media trip up in Healdsburg in December of 2019, so right before the pandemic. And I met these two women, Elise from What the Fab and Kara from Whimsy Soul, and they're both Bay Area bloggers. They were both full-time blogger influencers. And I just remember being so like astounded and taken aback that they were full-time blogger influencers. And I was like, okay, well, like, what does your husband do? Like, I hate that that was my first question, but that was my first question because I had this very limiting belief that like you couldn't make a full income being creative and doing things that you enjoyed. And Kara, actually, her blog supports both her and her husband. They work for her, like her blog business full time. And then Elise also, like, I mean, she shares her income reports on her podcast. So you can listen to those and just be blown away with how much she's like making. She's a very successful businesswoman in her own right. Doesn't need to come from family money, doesn't need to like have a rich husband. You can do this. And so like that was really the turning point. And I was like, okay, how can I do that? How can I be there? And so really the big thing was like having more of that like passive income. So that's when I started to like really, really care about my blog and start writing for that so that I could build up the site traffic so that I could put ads on it so that then I could have that passive income source.
Wow. Yeah. I think a lot of it comes from like, you have to see somebody else doing it almost and like recognize it like, okay, now that I see that it's possible, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. I think for me too, like sometimes when I think about going full time, I'm like, I just don't, you can't see it happening because you know where you are now and you're like, there's just no way. Where would the income come from? What would I do? But like you said, seeing that was probably a good way. And then you learn as you go.
Yes.
A lot of
yes.
that, right?
Learn as you go. Things build momentum. I feel like it's like a snowball you're pushing downhill. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and going faster and faster. But like the initial like pushing it off the edge is hard.
Yeah, it's like I feel like that's the part where like it's such a great thing to describe too, because you're like you're getting it there. It's like the hard uphill, and then once it's there, it goes. It doesn't feel that way when you're in the motion of doing the work.
No, and it was really hard for a really long time. I mean, like I was doing wine with Paige on the side. I had these brands who were like expecting the universe in exchange for a bottle of wine, and I didn't know I would guarantee posts like that. I was working. I also was working part-time, like 15 hours a week for Martin Reyes. He's a master of wine because I wanted to like get real wine experience and like understand what the business side looked like. And I was dancing and I had friends in a relationship. And I'm like, how did I, like, I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did it all. Like, I still do a lot, but like, they're different things now. And so it's crazy to look back and think that I used to work 40 hours a week for someone else and do so many other things.
Yes, it's amazing what we can put our minds to when we enjoy what we're doing, or at least we have, you have a goal in mind. So I wanted to go back to a little bit talking about kind of on Instagram and talking a little bit more about the word influencer. So I know you said before that you use the digital storyteller, and was there like a specific thing that happened that made you kind of push away from the word influencer, or what's kind of your relationship with that?
It's such a complicated relationship. Like, I don't want to hate it because I realize that I don't know, it's coming from such a biased place. It's very unfair. I know that like when you think the word influencer and have that like icky taste in your mouth, it's because you're thinking of like very vapid, shallow, usually women. Like there's some misogyny in hating the word influencer, I think. Like very shallow, vapid women who like only want free things and like they're not delivering value. They just are very self-entitled. Again, I think there's some misogyny there. And I don't want to hate the word, but I do because I know that's what like is conjured up for a lot of people. And obviously there's so much more to what I do on a day-to-day basis. Or even that woman who you're probably like imagining, like she probably is doing so much more too. Like it's hard.
I couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head with like one, like what you're doing is like you're picturing this, and again, like you said, it's usually women. So we always picture this woman who wants free things, and you're not realizing what's actually happening behind the scenes. So even the people that they're like, that you're picturing and you're thinking isn't doing the work, likely is doing way more work than you realize. So I definitely want to get into that, but I figured the way to kind of discuss this. So I thought about asking like, what does a typical day look like for you? But I also at the same time was like, I don't know if she has a typical day. So instead, maybe we could talk a little bit more about kind of the behind the scenes of the different services you provide.
Yeah.
So maybe starting, well, why don't we start with the influencer side, or what people would picture as the influencer side? So partnering with brands, whenever you see, for me, like I always see it as like whenever a reel or a post comes up and it says, sponsored or promoted or sponsored content, what does that whole kind of behind the scenes experience look like, or that service that you provide?
Yeah. So usually a brand will reach out to me, and they'll say, hey, we have this new wine we're launching. We'd love if you could promote it. We're looking for maybe a reel or stories. Like sometimes they say what they want. Sometimes they're just like, can we see your media kit? Like what services do you offer? In which case I do have like a nicely packaged little media kit, which I update every month. And that has like stats about me, my audience demographics, past case studies of successful partnerships, different things like that, as well as my services and rates. So they'll get that. If there's something cool about the wine that I can like create a story around, I'll tell them my idea right away. Otherwise, sometimes we'll jump on the phone to talk about that idea. Or I do spend a lot of time scrolling because I'm trying to figure out like what's currently trending. Instagram Reels have evolved so much in the last, they've only been around probably like a year and a half now. But
Yeah.
I feel like they started off as like the dancey pointy things, and now then they were very aesthetic, and now I feel like finally the storytelling element starting to show up more in Reels like it does on TikTok. So I'm really excited about that. But it's constantly changing, so constantly have to be on top of like trends and what's going on. So I'll look at that. I'll tell the brand, like, this is my idea. They'll look at it. They'll either like approve it or not. And then I will film it, which, depending on what it is, if it's a photo, that usually takes me maybe like, I don't know, somewhere between 20 to 60 minutes to shoot. If it's something that I can shoot just at home, that's easier. But a lot of times I'm scouting locations where I could shoot something so that it's aesthetic and different. Like you don't want to just see me in front of my wine rack every time, or like a selfie with the wine bottle. That's not what I do. So I'm trying to find a location that fits like the vibe and like just like tell a story with the image, right? Or if it's a reel, I'm really trying to tell a story. So that usually involves a lot more. So it takes me probably about an hour-ish to shoot every reel, whether that's like food prep or just getting like the different angled shots so that people with our short attention span stay focused. Like no clip in a reel is ever longer than 2 seconds to like really keep the viewer engaged. And then after I get everything shot, whether it's a photo or a video, I sit down to edit. If it's a reel, again, it takes a lot longer because especially if it's a voiceover reel. So I put all the clips together, I write my script, and then I record the audio. Then I put the audio overlaying with the video clips, make sure that it like flows right, find a trending audio to then like go under it. And then I still have to edit a cover photo. So there's still photography, even if I'm doing a video reel. And then I write a caption. And so all in all, like a photo post probably takes me like an hour and a half from start to finish. But a reel takes me probably about 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reels take forever.
When you think about all the work that has to go into that, and and it's like, oh wow, yeah, she's not just sitting there and like happens to be at a nice vineyard spot and took a little video and did some talking and was like, here you go, this is what I did. And that's just even like the content creation part. Like I'm curious too, like I dipped my toe into this area a little bit with Cork and Fizz, and did the brand partnerships, but quickly learned it was not my cup of tea, so to say. Also do not have near your photography and creative skills, so it just wasn't like an area that was where I should be in. But for me, one of the hardest parts too was even just like the communication with the brands and working with them, and sometimes one having it be recognized that like the work was work and I should be paid in more than just wine. I'm sure you have plenty of stories like that. But then also I feel like sometimes there's this idea that marketing on Instagram means that they're going to see the video or they're going to see the reel, they're going to see the post and immediately purchase the wine. Like, at least to me, that was something. And I'm curious, like, how you kind of communicate with brands or what you say the goal of these, these posts are, because I'm always like, there's like, I mean, like you said, we have short attention spans. We need to see things many times. I can't guarantee that I'm going to post this reel or post this photo and you're immediately going to have like 5 to 10 people wanting to buy your wine. That's just, to me, that's not what's happening. And I'm curious if you've had to have similar communications with brands.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to track on Instagram anyways. That's a whole different discussion. But yeah, I mean, so I think of marketing's a funnel, right? And so Instagram is very much like the top level of the funnel. It's getting brand awareness, it's getting people to follow your brand on Instagram, it's getting them to just kind of think about how your wine could be part of their life so that then when they see it down the road, they buy it. It's not usually leading to direct sales. Every once in a while, you're like, yes, it's not impossible, but it's very much the top of the funnel. And also it depends on what it is too. I've noticed that too. I do think wine is harder to sell online post-pandemic. But yeah, very top of funnel. And then that's where like you also need to have your marketing strategy in place. Like you're not going to give an influencer a free bottle of wine and they're going to be your entire marketing strategy. That doesn't make sense, but that's very much what a lot of wineries like have in the past. I think there's more awareness around it now, but in the past, that's kind of like what they expected. They were like, we gave out 12 free bottles of wine to 12 influencers. Therefore, marketing's done for the year. It was free. Yay. But that's not, it has to be part of a larger strategy. I think the current marketing statistic is it takes an average of a consumer 7 times from seeing an item the first time to making that purchase. So again, getting them in the funnel, they see it on my page, they follow you, they see your post, eventually they join your newsletter. They're like, oh, gee, I keep seeing it. They see it on the grocery store shelf, or they're like, oh, I need to order like a case of wine for my next barbecue. Paige posted this with steak and said it was really good. I keep seeing it on their Instagram. Okay, finally now I'm going to purchase.
Yeah, and you can't see that from your original post, right? There's going to be no way that you can tell that person did all those things. And I'm curious too, and then we'll get to that. I want to talk about blogging too, but on that side, do you find that you still have to negotiate quite a bit with brands when it comes to the monetary or like the what you earn from the partnerships?
Not as much anymore. I feel like the brands who get it. And then the smaller mom and pop ones don't necessarily dive into it because, I mean, maybe they get it too and they get that it needs to be part of a larger strategy and they just don't have the time necessarily to focus on that. But I feel like lately I haven't had as many of those frustrating conversations. I also do have like a disclaimer when a brand reaches out and they want to send wine. I have a disclaimer that like of my general sample policies. So I accept samples for organic consideration, but nothing is guaranteed outside of formal paid partnerships. Because obviously, like I still want to support the smaller brands that don't have budget. I love mom and pop places, but I just realistically can't guarantee anything or any sort of timeline. Like sometimes if it's a slow season, I get to a lot more of those wines. And if it's a busy season, like right now, I'm have piles of wine that I need to go through and figure out what to do with. Man. But I promise I'm not just like, haha, I got free wine today, not doing anything. Like I know that I want to do something with these bottles.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing too that was always so funny to me. I'm like, you want to give me free wine, but you do realize that like as a wino, I have a lot of wine. Like I'm the last person that I need like I'm not asking for free wine. I have wine. Thank you very much. Like I love trying wine and but like yeah, the paying in wine was something. And I'm glad to hear that it's gotten, a little more brands get it, or at least it's more understandable what this kind of marketing on Instagram is meant to be.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
And I also have I very early in my blog, I think during the pandemic, I went on a rant and blogged about how to work with influencers. So I actually get a lot of like the smaller places will have stumbled across that blog post first. So they like kind of come into it with understanding too.
Not a good idea, man. That's you're just like, listen, this is my expectation. This is what frustrates me. And they're like, all right, we can't go to Paige with this because we know.
Yeah. And the blog post like dives into like how to be successful with influencers too. Like again, not having that expectation of we sent 1 free bottle of wine, our marketing's done for the year. Like
that is
it goes into how to be successful too.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a rut, doing the same old thing day in and day out? You wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed, and repeat. When life gets busy, it can be easy to fall into that routine and forget how important it is to prioritize joy and fun. But what if I told you there was a way to break out of that cycle? A way to bring more excitement and adventure into your life. And it involves one of the most wonderful things in the world, wine. Introducing my Cork Crew Virtual Tasting Club. This is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. Each month, we'll select 2 styles of wine to focus on. We'll taste them together virtually, all while learning more about the regions that the wines are from and the grapes that make the wine. You'll also have the opportunity to meet winemakers, sommeliers, and other wine professionals through our monthly community events. But it's not just about the wine. It's about breaking out of your routine, trying new things, and having a little fun. Imagine being able to impress your friends at your next dinner party with your newfound wine knowledge. Feeling confident when you walk into a wine shop, knowing exactly what to look for and what you'll enjoy. Imagine adding a little bit of excitement to your everyday life. So why not do something for you? Come join the Cork Crew Virtual Tasting Club and start exploring the endless sea of discovery and joy that is the world of wine. Sign up at my website, corkandfizz.com/thecorkcrew, and don't forget to use code WINE101 to get your first month free. And now, back to the show. Okay, so let's switch over, talk a little bit about the blogging side. This is something where I know nothing about. And so I'd love to learn more about kind of what is that process similar to working with brands on Instagram? I know you're probably not, it's not only brand things on the blog, right? That's probably more education and things like that. So, and then also I want to touch on travel blogging as well, but I'm just curious kind of what does the process look like in building and creating your blog?
Yeah, so my blog is very SEO focused, so search engine optimization. So I have a keyword research tool I use called SEMrush. And so I will research keywords to figure out what people are looking for, which then is it just feels so rewarding, right? Because I have a blog post for the best Pinot Grigios or the best Chardonnay under $20 or things that people are actively looking for. And then I can actively drive them to wines that I love that have sent me samples. And because they're actively looking for it, they're more likely to buy it.
Right.
They're actively on the internet looking to buy something.
It's full circle. You're getting everything all connecting together.
Yes. So that process is, I don't know, it's different. I mean, there's a lot more research that goes into it and a lot more concrete research, I guess, right? Instagram, TikTok is very much based on feels of what's trending. Every month I look at my analytics and I'm okay, well, this type of reel is doing well, but also this one, I can't really put a finger on what type necessarily. I can get a feeling, but there's no concrete. Whereas with SEO, I can see specifically 12,000 people are searching or affordable Napa wineries and be cool. That's 12,000 people every month who I could guide somewhere. Let me write about that. But I'm not going to write something targeting, unfortunately, people aren't Googling women in wine. Unfortunately, I do write about that. But I realize when I write it that it's going to be more of a connected link strategy and not people searching for it.
So I'm guessing, do you do most of your posts are the SEO and then you kind of slip in some of those other ones that you're going to basically direct people to? You're not searching for this, but you should be.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then I can link it and in the best Cabernet post, I can be also women-led wines.
Click on this, learn about this.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious about I've been seeing a lot of the travel wine trips coming up, and they've been on Instagram, but I know you also kind of feature a lot of these on your blog as well. And so when you're on these trips, is there things that you do that people would be surprised by, so that you can create this kind of content?
Well, if it's like a formal media trip, like a formal group trip, there's so much more work than you would expect. There was one where I brought my dad along to help me with photography and videography because it's hard to be taking photos and video at the same time. So he's like, help. And by day two, he was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I need to go home.
He was like, thanks for the free trip, but I don't want it anymore. I'm done.
He was like, it's not free. Like, wait, like, he was like, this is too much work now. And then that trip actually ended up getting cut short. So he was happy about that and got to go home. But that was still like, well, it felt like it was late pandemic, but it got canceled because of COVID. So, but yeah, there are a lot. Like you wake up and you're expected to be like meet the group at 9 a.m. and then you go until like 11 or midnight at night. And somehow, somewhere along the way, I'm trying to post stories. I'm still trying to post to my feed. I'm trying to answer emails. But they're like constant go, 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 go. So I'm trying to take photos. I'm trying to take videos. I'm trying to write notes. I'm trying to conceptualize, like, how do I even tell this story? Like, what story is here to tell? Because a lot of times it's also interesting too. This is where like some places are getting it and some places aren't getting social media yet. Like I've been on some where you're just like in basically it feels like a warehouse or like in like an office building tasting through the wines. And I'm like, as much as I love your story, there's no visual and therefore I can write a blog post about it, but I can't. There's nothing for Instagram here. Like I just can't.
Right. Like you have to have something like the aesthetically pleasing is like we laugh at it or we make fun of it, but like there's something that's needed. People aren't just going to read something, especially like you mentioned, the short attention spans. We need that visual aid to draw us in.
Yeah. And so, I mean, social media is visual. Whether or not you want to laugh at it, that's how it is. And so if I'm just in a warehouse, sadly, there's nothing to do there. But I'm trying, constantly trying. They're a lot of fun, but they're a lot of work.
Yeah. I can believe that. So I'd be crazy also not to mention your photography. If anybody listening has not seen Paige's photos, I mean, her Instagram at Wine with Paige, she's got a ton of them. I'm always amazed with like your self-portraits are just like, how do you do that? Like you take the picture and you do this. But I'm curious. So are you self-taught when it comes to photography and how would you describe your style?
Yeah. So like most things, the more you do it, the better you get. I started photography in high school. I really, really loved it. Like I said, at one point, I thought I wanted to be like a fashion photographer or some sort of professional photographer. And I did this thing called a 365 project, which used to be more popular. I don't feel like people do them anymore, but it was basically a photo a day, every day for a year. This is before Instagram. So now I feel like people accidentally do that anyways. But before Instagram, still Facebook, still MySpace. The idea of taking a photo every day was like revolutionary. So that was something I did. So like every day I was trying to conceptualize, I was trying to find good lighting, I was trying to shoot and compose and like take something I could be proud of. And so just doing it and like putting myself constantly in that state was really helpful. And then yeah, in college, I worked with a on-campus fashion magazine to shoot, and that's like kind of where I got more of like how formal photo shoot could work. And so that's kind of what I now replicate in my own photo shoots. So like I'll come up with a mood board. It usually starts on Pinterest and then ends up in like Google Slides. I figure out what outfit like could go with the wine, and then I find a location. That's like for like, because I for context too, for the people who might not follow me yet, the more involved ones like that's from my Inspired by the Bottle series, where like you need a concept because it's something fun. Like I did a really fun one with this like starry light line, and so I had to find like the perfect starry dress and figure out where I could shoot where there would be like lights in the background, and needed props for the lights coming out of the wine glass. So those are more involved, but yeah. And yeah, also to your point, I shoot all of my own photos. I use a tripod and a mirrorless Canon R, which lets me see the like what my camera is seeing. I can see on my phone, which is also really helpful because I am not naturally comfortable in front of the camera. So every once in a while I'll have a friend like friend, I'll set them up as my like human tripod,
Sure.
but like knowing that someone's looking at me and not being able to see myself makes me feel so cringe and awkward. So being able to see myself on my phone as I'm like setting it up and I can be like, oh, like don't squeeze your arms in, like make shapes, like do things is really, really helpful.
That honestly, now that I think about it, yeah, I would far rather like pose in front of a tripod, like nobody there, than like when I ask somebody to take my picture, I immediately am like, am I looking funny? Like, what am I doing with this?
Right. And then I get kind of like goofy and silly and like I can't not like smile, which you don't always want to be smiling like a goofy idiot in your photos. Or like sometimes I feel like, I mean, like, especially if I ask like my best friend, I'll be like, do I look okay? And she's like, yes, you look great. And then I look at it and I'm like, you just love me. Like, shut up. That was terrible.
Like, I appreciate it. That's nice, but that's not what I meant. More like, does the picture composition look, you know, like, does it look like what I'm going for?
Was I like making 8 chins and like the most terrible face in the world? Like, thank you. I'm glad you love me like that, but I can't post that.
Oh, it's so funny. It's exactly like when my husband takes my picture and I'm like, was this, you thought this was like, did I look good in this picture? Oh, you look beautiful. I'm like, oh, thank you. But no, let's change the angle here. Yes, I love it.
Us.
They do. How can they not? But yes. Okay. So I want to give a chance here. I want to make sure I've hit on a lot of the things that you do. Is there anything else you want to discuss that, you know, if brands want to work with you, if anybody's, you know, hearing this and they're, you know, either a smaller winery or they work at a, you know, as a marketing at a bigger firm, how are different ways that people can work with you?
Yeah, so from the winery side, I do sponsored posts on social media. I also do social media audits and consulting, and I do take on a select number of social media clients where I do their social from start to finish, like planning out the content, taking the photos, writing captions and posting. So I do a lot of things. From the wine lover side, I also have an online course for how to learn about wine called 7 Days to Wine Confidence. That's on my website. You can also find all sorts of helpful guides if you're planning wine travel, if you're looking for the best Pinot Grigio, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon. Like I have shopping guides for everything. Also lots of free guides like how to hold your wine glass, how to chill wine fast. Like basically everything you could possibly need to know about wine is on my site. And I also feature regularly on Instagram and TikTok at Wine with Paige.
So
I think that's it.
That's just that. That's all I do. That's it. Yes, I feel like it's always good to have like that go-to, like your page and then like Wine Folly are like two of my go-tos when I want to like, because like you can search for things about wine, you know, on Google, but half the time you come up with something and you're like, do I trust the person who wrote this? Like, do they, you know, because there's so many misconceptions. So having like those go-tos, and I definitely think your page, Wine with Paige, and then the Wine Folly are two of my favorites. So, okay, two last questions. Well, actually, the last question is a speed round, so that's multiple. But okay. I'm curious, do you have any favorite blog posts or brands that you've worked with?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many favorite blog posts or brands.
Or even like a favorite like photo series too, if you don't want to shout out brands, because we love all brands, right?
Yes, we love all of them. I only work with brands I love, therefore all of them. I do turn down things that I don't like. I mean, I think like I really love doing my Inspired by the Bottle series. I haven't been doing as many because it's been very busy travel season lately. But I love that series. I think the Starry Night one I mentioned is one of my favorites that I did, just because it's so different. I mean, my favorite blog post probably is the Affordable Napa Winery blog post that I have, just because there's so many misconceptions about how expensive Napa is. And yes, those like crazy high luxurious experiences are out there, but there's also affordable ways to visit here and experiences that are meant for everybody. Like Trefethen just launched this like beginner wine experience that's really cool. It's I think $30 a person. And again, it's like really designed for like intro to wine lovers, which is really fun because again, Napa gets so much of like a snobby rap. So like you get to go through the vineyard, they show you the vines, they show you the winery, they give you like the full thing from like grape to glass.
Dang, I love that.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really cool.
No, I like that. I am definitely guilty. I definitely totally pictured Napa as like always being very expensive.
I mean, it is. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. But there are also more affordable and approachable experiences here too.
Yeah, and so cool that they're focusing on beginners too, and you get to do all of that for like if it, whatever 30 or whatever it is. It sounds like a great deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so last to finish this, I wanted to do just a quick little speed round. I've been doing this with every guest because it's just kind of fun. Speed round meaning like you just don't need to think about these a lot. I'm not expecting you to like come up with them as I ask the question, but just kind of like fun little things to hear from wine experts and what they're drinking and all these things. So we'll start off with what's your favorite wine at the moment?
I just had this really delicious Cabernet from, I think it's called Matthys, but it's the highest tier label at Dutcher's Crossing.
Okay.
And it was just so incredible. Sometimes I live in Napa. I love Napa, but sometimes I get a little bored with Napa Cab. But this one was just like so beautifully complex and interesting and just like evolved in my glass as I was drinking it. I can't stop thinking about that wine. I think it was like 2 weeks ago and I need to go get more.
I was just gonna ask you, I'm curious, are you one of those people that like will have to go get more of something you love, or you're just like, oh, that was a moment and I just have to drink a bunch of other wines?
I tell myself I'm not allowed to buy wine because I have so much, but the reality is that if I love it, I'll buy it.
100%. All right. And with all your travel, this will be a great question. What's the favorite wine region you've ever visited?
Well, Napa has a special place in my heart because I live here. But I think Chianti Classico is my favorite place I've visited.
Hey.
It was gorgeous, like beautiful rolling hills, and I love pasta and Italian wine, so just my place.
Great pick. Okay, how about a wine region you'd like to visit?
My goal is to visit a winery in all 50 states because wine is made in all 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
So this year I'm hoping to get to Virginia and the Finger Lakes. But then, I mean, there's so many places outside of the country I want to go to. So
I know.
It's hard.
I feel that. Virginia, I'd love to go there. I started following some people on Instagram that are in Virginia and sharing all the wineries. I'm like, oh, those look so fun. It's so
very
pretty.
up and coming. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Okay. How about favorite wine and food pairing?
Popcorn and Chardonnay.
Great pick. Is it a buttery Chardonnay or is it like the
yeah. I love a buttery Chardonnay, especially when it's like has like that toasted toffee type flavor to it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, honestly, there's like Chardonnays that smell to me like buttered popcorn, and I'm always just like, I need a. Yeah,
I know it's out of fashion. I feel like now it's trendy to hate on buttery Chardonnay, but I love it.
That's why I had to ask you. I'm like, I bet you it is, and I'm like, I need more people to hear that, like us winos and people that are into wine also do like some of us, not everybody. Yeah. Everybody has different tastes. But like,
I think the key is it has to be a well integrated, high quality. Like if you're drinking some of the like $5-6 like really buttery oaky Chardonnay, it does feel like licking an oak barrel and it's like gross. But like Rombauer's Chardonnay, their buttery one that they're really known for, I think it's nicknamed like Cougar Juice. Like it's so good.
Yes, it's all about balance, right? You can have you have that buttery flavor as long as there's something else going on in the bottle as well.
Yeah.
All right. Last question I have for you. What do you consider the best bottle of wine? And this can be like a style of wine too. It doesn't have to be an exact bottle, but like best wine under $15.
So another guilty pleasure that I feel like is fashionable for wine snobs to hate on. I love bourbon barrel aged cab. I think it's so yummy. It's like addictive. It's like candy. And Ironside Cellars from 90 Plus Cellars has a bottle that's $15 and it's so good.
All right. I like to hear it. I like that we're throwing those things out there where people now they're like, it's okay if you like. I feel like the other one too is like one of these days I need to find like a wino that just loves Moscato, because that's one of those two that just like gets crapped on all the time.
Moscato was my gateway. Yeah. That was like the first wine I ever liked. But I've had too many hangovers from it and I will not partake now.
That is fair. That is fair. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, Paige. I learned so much and really loved getting to know more behind the scenes on what you do and all the work that you do in the wine world.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. If you loved it as much as I did, I would so appreciate it if you could take a quick second to rate it and leave a review. And if you know a wine lover in your life that would enjoy this, please share it with them. It would mean the world to me. Be sure to go check out Paige's blog, winewithpaige.com, and follow her on Instagram at winewithpaige. And of course, if you're a wine brand, don't hesitate to reach out. She does some really beautiful stuff. In next week's episode, I'll be teaching you all about orange wine. And no, it's not made from oranges. Oranges. Oh my god, I just said orange like the way my grandma says orange. Shout out Grandma Connie. Okay. No, it's not made from oranges. Though that's a fair question. We're going to talk about why it's called orange wine in the episode. Thanks again for listening, and if you want to learn more about wine, come follow me at Cork and Fizz on Instagram. And if you're interested in exploring new wines and joining an incredible community of wine lovers, be sure to sign up for my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. Use code WINE101 to get your first month absolutely free. Cheers!